Movies on video cassette.
Welcome to Strange Glow Video.
Guys, I'm eating junk and watching rubbish.
We're oozing with VHS, horror, nostalgia, and more.
New Better Block Glow in the Dark.
After it runs some videotape, you can get a glow-in-the-dark hand puppet from the movie Casper.
And now, your hosts, Alec, Justin, and Nick.
Hey, you're not allowed to rent here anymore. Yeah!
Hey, welcome back to Strange Glow Video. My name is Justin. With me, as always, Alec. How are you doing tonight?
I am doing fine.
Doing fine, feeling fine, looking fine?
What is that from? Feeling fine and getting some jine.
I don't know. That's sounds kind of vulgar.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Ooh, you weren't expecting that from us? So tonight we have an amazing movie to talk about. Alec and I haven't spoken a word about this movie to each other yet because you saw it today. I saw it last night. You called me earlier. I wanted to talk about it, but I was like, you know what? Let's just wait. Just wait.
Yeah, this is interesting. This is going to be interesting. Let's talk about a little bit of the background of this, about at least how we found out about it, and then I read a little bit about the director and stuff like that. Let's talk about that real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know this movie was coming out till we went and saw 4:30 movie like a couple weeks ago, and I saw the trailer for it there and was like, all right, I'll see that.
That's where I saw that, and like it immediately catches your attention. You're like, oh, okay. And then, won an award for best screenplay. So
yeah, at the Cannes Film Festival. So
yeah, that alone says a lot for a movie that, if you're not familiar with the trailer, and obviously we're going to get real heavy into spoilers once we start talking about the movie itself, but that first trailer is very captivating. You're like, oh shit, okay. So it's kind of giving you vibes that it's horror, mostly from the score. I don't feel like the trailer gave a lot away, right? It kind of leaves a lot of...
Oh, yeah.
It's very ambiguous, right? You don't really know what to think of this movie. It just seems interesting from the trailer cut.
Absolutely seems fascinating. It seems like from the trailer, I could tell, okay, this is going to be a little bit of Death Becomes Her. Like that's the vibe I was getting. And just to demonstrate that, I do have the VHS right here.
Yep. So for me, the vibes I was getting was the Paul Rudd show that was, I believe, on Netflix. It was called Living with Yourself or Living with Myself.
Oh, I remember that. I didn't watch it, but I do remember it coming out.
Really enjoyed that series. Very good. And so to me, I thought this movie was going to be more in line with that if you've seen that series. So it kind of gave me some of those vibes, but I love these things where it's kind of a twist on reality. And then the other thing about this, there's a lot of social commentary and a lot of satire in this movie, but the script is so well done. I feel like lots of times that's a difficult act to balance, is all this shit. And then the third act of this movie was just fucking mind-blowing. And I don't feel mind-blowing at the movies very often, but I was just like fucking overstimulated during that final act of that movie. It's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
So good.
There's lots of different other movies and directors I'm going to reference while we talk about this.
Oh yeah. There's clearly the director, she was influenced by many people.
First one I'm going to bring up right now, I think is one of the most obvious ones is Stanley Kubrick.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly some of the symmetrical book stacking, symmetrical shots, and even the carpet in that hallway of her work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the layout.
Shining reference, that carpet.
Yeah, and the cinematography for that, like the long shots of that hallway.
Yeah.
The feelings that it gives you.
Feelings of dread in your hallway or attic. Sorry. So there's a lot of that, and who else was influenced a lot by Stanley Kubrick was David Lynch. I could see some of that in this movie for sure.
Yeah.
And the big one, which we'll probably get to later on, at least, is going to be David Cronenberg.
The body horror master, man. Like, that's him. Body horror. So
Demi Moore, I haven't seen in a lot of modern stuff. I was looking her up, and she definitely has done modern stuff. It's just that I haven't seen a lot of it, of course.
Yeah.
But this just came out of nowhere, and I don't know if she's ever done nude scenes in movies or anything like this, but it was a crazy experience. She murdered that performance. Sorry about the cat butthole and balls.
Yeah. Alex cat's intact. So,
Yeah, he needs to not be though. I need to take care of that for sure.
yeah.
You got a pair of scissors I can borrow?
At this point, he's gonna be like, "Why'd you take my coin purse?"
Hell has to the purse still. I'm just taking the coins out of it.
Well, they usually kind of take that away too. So there's just not a floppy place to attack.
I don't think they do that so much anymore.
I don't know. You have
I
to
don't know.
find out.
I don't know for sure.
So going in this movie, there's several things that aren't even spoiler territory that immediately stood out to me at the end of this movie. The fucking ADR and the Foley, fucking phenomenal. Like mukbang in a fucking movie to a degree, like literally the fucking squelching sounds and everything else
Ugh.
is fucking phenomenal, man. I was just could not believe it. I was just so absorbed in that. And then you're talking about the cinematography where you've got these very Kubrick feeling shots. You've got a very modern social media influence with some of the dance numbers and things like that for the workout show. Absolutely incredible. And then all the set design I thought was really cool. Like this movie studio or the TV studio was very square, symmetrical. But that apartment was so rounded in shape. Like there's so much contrast in the way these things were laid out. And even just some of the above headshots, like in the shower, that scene was like where it was like clearly a very tall shower stall to be able to like change the feel of the shower itself. Like sometimes it felt big and small and you felt like you were close and you're eavesdropping. And then sometimes it felt very small and scary and isolating.
Yeah. That bathroom alone reminded me of Kubrick, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, this is the bathroom of a psychopath.
Yes. Absolutely. Like all pure white tile and everything like that. Yeah. So unsettling.
Yeah, it helps the movie along for sure. Margaret Qualley, who I've pretty much only seen in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think. But I know she's
Yeah.
done a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah. When I looked at her IMDb, that was the biggest, not the biggest, I would say. That's the feature that I'm most familiar with her from is because, you know, we're Tarantino fans, obviously. So,
Yeah. And then Dennis Quaid, as you were mentioning before, in that was the grossest scene of the whole movie somehow.
it was, wasn't it? And that's just a man eating food and like just being disgusting in it. But that a lot of movies don't do that with the Foley and the ADR and the voice mix. Like everything was amplified up so much to like really make it in your face. And it works so well for this movie. Like, right, this is a movie that would be so much of this movie would be lost if you watched it at home, like in a quiet volume set. Like if you watch it at home, you want to watch it almost with like headphones on or like full surround sound because that's the only way to get the true experience of this.
I would never watch this with headphones.
Oh, fuck, that would be so good, man. Like that it just takes the body horror of this whole film, like, and amplifies it. It's just, oh yeah, I really, really love that, man. I was so impressed. And the score too. The score like had this modern pop vibe to it with some of the bits and then some of the synth stuff in there. And like, it was very much, reminded me of the Kill Bill score to some degree. Like some of the killing violent sequences with that, I don't even know how you want to describe that bit of the score that just kept coming back in there.
Well, there were certain bits that they each had their own sort of like music stylings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, each character kind of had their own thing going.
The stuff that was happening while Margaret Qualley was taking over was like this insane dance music, and it was just thumping, pumping the whole fucking time, and it was crazy.
And the way that was shot, it was like so gratuitous, and like that's the social commentary of like modern beauty standards, but it was like so in your face, but so well done. You're like, holy shit, you can't look away. It's like just they're doing all this, and it's like most people see that shit on social media all day long. They don't even think anything twice about it. But this movie's like very much making you aware of like how over the top that is, how asinine that is.
I think this movie, yeah, it's aware of its message, and it's aware that its message shouldn't have to be a message anymore. It should just be a thing. It's like
Yeah.
obvious, and it is obvious in its nature that watching this movie, everything that it's saying is obvious. It knows it's doing. That's why it's cynical and in its nature that way.
Yeah. And then by the time you get to the end of this movie, you know, you're not even really having, you know, that social commentary is kind of changed, but it's not even, it doesn't feel in your face in that same way. It's morphed into something else. And I would say, controversial speaking here, the last act of this movie is the best Resident Evil movie I have ever seen.
Huh.
Just the visuals and everything, the character design was amazing.
You know, it's funny. I played some Resident Evil 5 recently because we hooked up our PS3.
Mm-hmm.
Tatum wanted to play it, and she was having a hard time playing that because she's used to playing like Spyro the Dragon. And I was like, listen, Resident Evil's a whole other bitch.
Yeah.
You gotta like hold a button down to hold your gun out and shit. Like it's a pain in the ass. And then I ended up playing it for a little while. But like the monsters in that game, there's so much that was reminding us of Stranger Things.
Oh, yeah.
It was crazy. Like there's beasts that open up their face like the Demogorgon in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's dogs that open up their face the same way like the demo dogs. And then there's the flying ones too. Like
Yeah.
the bats and the force suit. It was crazy.
And I'm talking old school Resident Evil here. I think it's Resident Evil 2 and 3 that have characters, particularly 2, where like the version of the tyrant from Resident Evil 2 like just has this like body that just morphs throughout and gets grosser and grosser throughout the movie. And like I was like, holy shit, when I was watching this movie, I was like, they nailed it. They did it in a way that the Resident Evil movies were unable to do, at least for those first 3 games. So I was really impressed.
I was getting flashes of, in particular, Videodrome, The Thing.
Shit, I would even say Basket Case as far as some of that look goes.
Oh, definitely. That's the other one. I thought of that at some point too. That's
Yeah,
absolutely one of the one.
When I saw that creature, yeah, it was fucking
Belial
fascinating.
from Basket
Yeah.
Case.
Yeah. Right. And so obviously jumping into the cast, right? Demi Moore plays Elizabeth Sparkle, right? A movie star with her walk on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, which I found that fascinating too. Like they just give us this very brief, hey, this person was very popular at some point in time. Like they didn't drag it out, didn't make it anything more than it needed to be. They didn't give us any flashbacks of Margaret, you know, as the younger version of her. Like that really allowed her to be her own thing. And then she plays Sue. And then the creature we're talking about, spoiler alert from here on out, is the Monstro Eliza Sue, or however they pronounce that. But I love those title cards they threw in there for us, like just kind of giving you like the breakdown of the movie of where you're at and like these character arcs. Because there's basically the 3, right? The first, second, third act.
No, yeah, it's really. I didn't know there was going to be a whole third act once we got there. I was expecting it to end sooner, but once they did there, they fucking committed. And
they went hard in the paint on that, man. They really just took it to the next level, and I was fucking there for it.
Yeah.
It was something else.
I don't know if I've seen that much blood since Dead Alive. And that's that's saying something.
Yeah. I mean, it very much felt like a Carrie, The Shining, some real flashbacks to some like real bloody, gory scenes, like back to 70s horror, like early 80s horror, right? I mean, it doesn't feel like anything modern has really gone to that level of some of these things. And it was just spraying and spraying and spraying. And I was like, oh my God. And I feel like we're completely skipping over like the beginning of the movie, because the beginning of this movie starts out great, right? We clearly have Elizabeth, who's truly struggling with who she is and where she is because she gets fired from her job because they say she's 50, you
Yeah.
know, and then she's under this thing, and then the studio head, which,
Spoiler: Demi Moore is actually 61.
yeah, I know, Dennis Quaid.
She's drinking the blood of babies. I'm saying it right here.
Yeah,
She looks
well,
great.
I've heard people say she's had a lot of work done. I'm like, I don't know, but for 61 years old, probably 60 when she shot this, like, really takes care of herself, right?
I was going to say, honestly, it's easier for Hollywood people to take care of themselves a
Well,
little
yeah,
bit because they
personal
have the
trainers and
privilege
things.
of not just personal trainers, but you don't have like a 9 to fucking 5 job. You're working 40 hours a week, and then you're trying to also go and work out with a personal trainer. Even if you had the money, you have more free time and things like that. Like you
Hmm.
get paid to get in shape for a movie if that's your thing too. So I don't know, goofy shit, but yeah, that's part of the messaging, for sure. It's not
Yeah.
lost on these people who are in this movie or anything.
Hmm. So Dennis Quaid in this was very interesting as well.
Gnarly.
Now, he really plays this disgusting creep, and he's so good. But
Exactly, because he kind of is one.
yeah, he knocks that out of the park. And I think like the big movies I've seen him in, right? Obviously, Inner Space and Dragonheart are two of the most frequent ones that I'd seen growing up, right?
I'm gonna add to that list Jaws 3,
Yeah,
and The Day After Tomorrow.
yeah,
Hold on, there's some other ones. Let me look up
yeah. I mean, he
Dennis.
has a lot of stuff. I'm just talking about what I personally relate to with him the most, right? I saw
I
Inner
know that.
Space all the time on TV as a kid,
Yeah,
and
Inner
then
Space is probably in the top for his films.
yeah, and I feel like I haven't seen him in much recently either. And it's not necessarily is not working. It's just that he's been out of my realm. Same thing with Demi Moore, right? I hadn't really kept up with her, and
Oh,
wow.
he was in The Parent Trap. He was the dad in
Oh,
the Parent
okay.
Trap remake.
Yep.
Day After Tomorrow, Flight of the Phoenix, Vantage Point. You remember that?
It sounds familiar. I'm not connecting the dots to the exact story of that one.
It's a
But
political action thriller about an assassination on the president in Spain, as seen from the vantage point from various different characters: Dennis Quaid, Matthew Fox, Forrest
oh, okay.
Whitaker, Sigourney Weaver.
Oh, maybe I did see that one with Sigourney Weaver in it. Okay.
Oh, Pandorum. That's another one I'm thinking of. I really liked because it's
Okay.
kind of like Alien or Event Horizon, and he's in that. Like I said, I knew there were some other ones that I really liked him in, but like he just did Reagan too, because he's like all, you know, right wing these days, or at least open
Hmm.
about it anyway.
Yeah.
And he's in that with like a bunch of buttheads.
Anyway, so he's such a good person for this role because he just comes across as an asshole and a creep, and everything we've heard that's come out of kind of like that modern Me Too movement and all the scumbags in Hollywood that have done this or done that. Like he really personifies that at an amplified level. And that shrimp eating scene, you literally just want to take that ball and just strike him across the fucking face with it because he's just so obnoxious and he's so conceited. It's just disgusting. Like really, truly grotesque.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, when we're talking about directors and influences, the David Lynch influence into this to me is that we don't learn any background about this drug. It's just called the substance. Like we never figure out whose voice that is. We don't see that. We don't need to. Like none of that matters.
Yeah.
Like we're just here. This exists in this world. We're going on this journey. The hows or whys don't matter. And to me, that's very well done for a film because lots of times, like if shit doesn't add up throughout the course of a movie, you're like annoyed. You're like, why don't we know about this? Why don't we know about that? You don't need that here. It just gets you to the point. And I did like how there's this person on the phone, like you have no idea who this person is, what they look like, how they even developed this drug, which also is again the Resident Evil vibes at the beginning where they show the egg, like that simple scene of the egg just splitting with the substance.
Yeah.
Very much like that bio has like you could easily do another one of these and have it be like a zombie style movie and take that same kind of concept from it. There's just so many fascinating things about the way this was written, shot, everything.
That's funny. I never even thought about Resident Evil. I was just thinking Death Becomes Her the whole time. And then at one
Okay.
point I was thinking Videodrome.
Yeah, and I don't know why, but those first couple of Resident Evil games I played all the time as a kid, and so like messing with shit that people shouldn't be messing with, this is right up that alley. And I wasn't expecting that third act to go that way, but when you look back and you think about it, like it very much intentionally says, for single dispose after single use. And you're like, well, why does it say that? And then Sue's character, right? When Sue comes in there, she's very much this over sex charged character, very gratuitous, like tantalating scenes with her dancing, just with her prancing around in her underwear and all the nudity, which a lot of movies don't do that these days, which you could argue that you don't need to do that or you do need to do that. For this movie, it worked very well. It was done tastefully. I didn't
Okay.
feel like anyone was exploited in some of these.
I
In
want to
this,
point. Yeah, I just want to point out while we're talking about this that the director is a woman
yeah, that's a good
and
call.
a French woman.
Yep,
So checks out.
yep. But that all adds up. And when I say that the nude scenes were tastefully done for the most part, right? I don't think there's anything there that was like detracting from the story. Now, the dancing and everything like that, those shots were intentionally like supposed to be titillating, but everything else felt like it was pretty well done as far as fitting into the story.
I do want to say I meant to say the director's name. It's just that I have a hard time pronouncing it. It
Well,
is
you can
Coralie Fargate or Forget or some French pronunciation of that. But this is her second feature length film. She did a movie called Revenge in 2017 that I have not seen.
I know it's a must watch for me now. After seeing this, I'm going to have to go track that down and see it because I'm curious. Like that this movie could come out of here. We haven't heard much about it. We haven't heard much about her. So she's got one of their feature length. We're going to have to check that out now.
Yeah. It says it seems like a combination of I Spit on Your Grave and Duel.
Okay.
Interesting.
What I was fascinated with was that we have a French director that makes a movie in English, like of this caliber, right? So I think that was pretty awesome. And I don't know if it's just the fact that, obviously Americans love horror films or what, and it just could be her personal influence from American filmmakers that made her go that route. So Sue was quite the interesting character. I felt like there's a good amount of character development for a character that's just coming out of that. I mean, and the body horror starts pretty early on in this film, right? As soon as she squeezes out of that body and then has to sew the other body up, and she's like damn near vomiting and like having to hook that through and like doing this gigantic thread that doesn't look like anything you'd actually stitch somebody up with. It's way too big of a thing, and she's tying it in knots and like it's all spread out before. Like the body horror there alone was like, okay, that's really good. And from the trailer, I was like, I didn't know what to expect. I thought that was very interesting, right? It almost looked like a butcher shop with the way that back was split open. And then all the needles and stuff. There's so many things that, like, if you have, because body horror is interesting, right? Certain body things don't bother everybody, but I feel like almost every element of body horror was kind of fit in here in a way that felt pretty natural to really make you uneasy at some point, no matter what kind of stuff you can tolerate.
That's the thing. Body horror is the only shit that fucks with me now. So
yeah, it's very uncomfortable to watch. Some of those sequences, like I was getting a little, you're just crawling in your skin because it's uncomfortable.
So when, Elizabeth's body is slowly decaying because the other person, Sue, keeps overextending her time. That shit was fucking gnarly.
Yeah.
Like the way they did these effects was great too. God, by the end, when she's just like a hunchback.
Oh yeah, that was
like
fucking
Gollum.
intense. Yeah.
Oh, that was brutal.
And I love how this movie was not afraid to fuck with you in the way that when Elizabeth becomes that decrepit old woman because Sue has basically sucked all of her, I don't even know what to refer to that, but when all the serum's gone, right?
Her
All
mojo.
the stable, yeah, all the stabilizers gone. When all the stabilizers gone, she's really having a hard time moving around at first and falling over, and then like all of a sudden she's got like this super speed, like this thing's able to run super fast, and it's very. I mean, there's legit stuff in there, and again, that brought me back to the Resident Evil of like something like slowly kind of like dies and becomes something else and is like just running around in a terrifying manner that you weren't expecting. It was like, damn.
Yeah, it's something else. That final form definitely reminded me of the final scene of The Thing. Some of the final creatures, anyway, in that movie.
Yeah.
And like Demi Moore's face on the back or side of it, whatever, like just absolutely terrifying.
Well, and if you take the Shining influence again, so when Elizabeth is the old decrepit version of her and like she's running around naked, it's very much the Shining shower scene where the old lady's in there, right? It's not the beautiful woman, it's the shower scene. And like I feel like
Yeah,
it
I got
almost
that.
to me seems like that scene from The Shining like influenced this whole idea. Like, what's this dichotomy of young and old and beauty and terrifying stuff, right? It almost just feels like that alone could have sparked this whole film. There's a lot more to it than that, but you just see those scenes and you relate them to the Kubrick stuff and you relate them to the David Lynch and the Cronenberg, and you're like, man, this stuff's all over the place, but it's so good.
Yeah. Sorry, the cats are doing shenanigans in here.
Yeah. Do you don't want them to destroy the studio setup? Yeah, there he goes.
But yeah, it was definitely like the best way, if I was to describe it and try to sell it to someone who knows movies, I would say it's Stanley Kubrick and David Cronenberg co-directing a Death
Series
Becomes
written.
Her remake.
Okay. That's fair. I feel like the Lynch stuff's a little more subdued in here because it's kind of more of like what's left out, what's the point, isn't spelled out for you directly in here.
Well, that's the
Right,
thing is
which-
David Lynch doesn't spell anything out, and he does things just for the fuck of them sometimes because they're weird. I don't think
Mhm.
this movie did a lot of that. This movie was pretty straightforward in its stuff because I think that's
This-
part of it's tied into the messaging, I think. So
Yeah, and the Lynch aspects that I took out of it was it doesn't just spoon feed you everything, right? There's just things that we don't need to know, so it just doesn't tell you. Right? Because that third act, like everyone's exploding, there's blood everywhere, all that, like it's something else. I mean, my mind was fucking blown when I was watching that on screen because I just have never actually partaken in anything like that in the theater.
it reminded me of the movie Demons. Also, I don't know if
Okay.
you've seen that. It's
I have not.
it's an Italian horror movie. I think you might be able to watch it on Shudder, but it's I think it was produced by Dario Argento, but I don't think he directed it. But it's about like demons and a gore fest in a movie theater. Like people go to a movie premiere or something and somebody cuts themselves on like a statue in the lobby that's actually an ancient statue, and their blood like awakens this demon shit. It's fucking wild. It's just that ending scene though in the theater, seeing all that chaos. That's what it reminded me of.
And so with the Sue stuff, right, you're kind of leading up to this character because she's basically becoming a monster, becoming selfish. Right. And like the two are the same. You're the same. Right. Which is interesting to me because when they spelled that out, when I first saw the trailer, I was like, okay, either this thing makes you young or where this alternate version of you is created. In this case, it was like, what are you doing with the mind? Does the memory go back and forth if they're one and the same? And it seems like there was this like blurredness of like they knew that they didn't know that, especially when you get to the monster Eliza Sue.
I will say, I think when they are switching back and forth, they are switching consciousness, obviously. But I think it is like the natural things of like almost being thrown into a young body affects how the brain is just functioning and working and being in a completely different state. And I think that's probably what's going on there for the most part. I mean, it's a fucking movie, obviously. Like you were saying, it's kind of doesn't need to really make sense other than be vague about things. Works because once that other creature is born, I guess you'd say, then there's no more switching of the consciousness. So,
Well, no, and then obviously Elizabeth is basically dead at that point, right? Elizabeth gets beaten to death, and I legit thought that Sue was going to die because she killed the other half. Like, so
Yeah.
I was kind of waiting for that, and I love that they did something different with it. The other thing we kind of skipped over, I want to talk about for a minute, was the old man.
Mhm.
It was also the doctor that got her into that. Like the fact that he followed her there and followed her into the restaurant, I thought was nice and creepy. And like, she's going through this because she wants to be young and beautiful again. And yet she's disgusted and creeped out by this guy, even though she's disgusted by herself. And I love how the fact that she could not kill the other self, regardless of how fucking destroyed her body was by her, right? It was just completely ruined. And yet she can't inject a terminate all the way. She just has to let it go and stop. And she doesn't have the heart to do it, even though, Sue basically beat her to death after that.
Yeah.
So fascinating, like the way that works. Truly terrifying too, right? Would you have the ability to kill yourself if you were your other self?
No,
But-
yeah, remind me of Looper.
Mm-hmm. And then the creepy neighbor, right? He's like, stop banging around making noise. Oh, and that's how somebody would be in real life. Like, how many women have experienced that? Someone's coming up to confront them. They find that person attractive, and then all of a sudden they just don't give a shit anymore. You're like, huh.
That guy is Louis Tully. Oh, Dana, it's you.
Yeah. Yeah, he really was.
Yeah, that last
But before we get to the Monstro Eliza Sue, we get some really good fucking body horror again. We get the teeth getting ripped out, which is really fucking uncomfortable for a lot of people. A lot of people are grossed out by teeth, by eyes.
the nails.
The fingernails is real fucking unsettling. Like I said, they hit every type of body horror that you can really kind of throughout this movie without overdoing it and without like doing too much of it and taking away from any of them. Like the sewing needles was gross, and that was early on, and the pacing was there. And then, we get the teeth and we get the fingernail, which is kind of spread out a little bit through that scene. And the fucking character design for the Monstro Eliza Sue was fucking amazing. Like the teeth, the face, the eyes, the fact that you have like a regular version of Sue's face just stuck on there.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was beautifully messed up. There's just like half of a mouth randomly here.
Yeah.
I want to point out that at one point this creature is on stage speaking into a microphone, and out of one of its many mouths, it vomits a tit with a tentacle attached to it.
Yeah, a breast with a tentacle attached to it. That was phenomenal. Like she's hacking and hacking and hacking, and then that happens. Totally unexpected. You're like, what the hell's coming out of her?
Mhm.
Like, is it another version of the Monster Sue? Okay. And then, they hit the monster's head and it like regrows, which to me was fucking perfect. You get that big like splash of violence, and you're like, okay. And then you're like, that's like blowing out the candle and your wish coming true, right? Because you're at this scene in the movie where this happens, and then all of a sudden, like, shit gets even wilder than you can imagine. And everyone is just getting bled on all through that entire like studio audience. Everybody in there. And like people are like scared by it, they're freaking out by it. No explanation of what happens after either, right? You just get this weird thing that eventually
People
creatures
go on stage and fuck her up, and then
Mhm.
and then she leaves still.
Yeah, that
And
very
it's like-
much goes to the Frankenstein's monster, where like they chase it up the hill, they chase it onto the stage and they destroy it because they're uncomfortable with it. Not because it's really posing a threat to anybody, because it's not. It's just uncomfortable for them. So, I mean, it goes back to Frankenstein's monster with the scope and the influences on this.
And then motherfucker splatters on the pavement, just trips on the sidewalk and splatters open. And that reminded me of Tremors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, when the graboids fucking splat on the ground. Yep.
That's what I pictured there.
Uh-huh.
And then her face wobbles away, which kind of reminded me of something from like The Faculty or Mars Attacks or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Solid.
And then the irony of this movie kind of starting, showing this woman's Walk of Fame star being made, and then like her final place is to go die in the final piece is that just being cleaned, and then there we kind of are.
Yeah. No, that was a very interesting ending. I liked it. There were some editing choices that were interesting during that ending bit. I feel like it could have maybe cut out some time there. I don't think it was. It wasn't excruciatingly long or anything. And by when I say that, but what are you gonna do? Also, that's a David Lynch thing. Who the fuck gives who gives a fuck how long a scene is?
Yeah. Well, I didn't feel like any of that was running on too long because I was literally just in so much shock of like how grotesque they got with it that I didn't care that was dragging on. Because what felt like the natural ending point in the movie is when things were like, yeah, you think that's cool? Well, what do you see what we do next? And you're like, holy shit. Cannot believe it. So
Yeah, it got pretty wild there. And it was about 2 hours and 10 minutes long. It didn't I could tell that it wasn't just a 90-minute movie when we were around probably 90 minutes. I was like, I was expecting a wrap up, but now there's a third act called the Monstru Lazipsu or whatever. And
yeah, once you get that title card there, basically throwing that out there for you, you're like, okay, how much is left? You're like, is this going to be 10 minutes? And it's really the final act there at that point. And so much of what led up to that felt like you could have already been there. But I love that they really just ran with it and took it to the next level here.
it was absolutely wild.
I legit haven't been that fucking surprised or shocked in a movie since I was a fucking kid. I mean, in a theater, right? I've watched some stuff at home, like older stuff like that had I seen that in the theater would have had the same effect. But to me, to go see a new movie like this that we just heard about, that I'd only seen one trailer to go in there and to be utterly surprised and delighted and terrified in the body horror sense, right? No, there's no like pop jump scare scenes or anything like that, which was another plus, I say, right? In a movie like this, it would be easy to throw in a few jump scares, which are not necessary because that's not what this movie's about. This movie's about making you uncomfortable because of beauty standards and then body horror. Fucking so good.
Yeah. Bravo. What are you going to rate this movie?
Fuck, man. I give this a 9 out of 10. I was really fucking going in there without any expectations besides the fact that I was intrigued by the trailer. And I walk out of there going like, really fucking liked it. Really enjoyed it. Can't wait to see it again, just to take it all in and be like, okay, take in the layers, the subtlety of the shit that I didn't know. Because like I always say, the first time I watch a movie, there's some anxiety because I don't know what's going to happen. And in some movies that's bad, but in this movie, it fucking worked out in my favor because I just had no expectations. I was able to really enjoy it start to finish, and I can't wait to see it again.
Yeah, no, I also agree. 9 out of 10. That's exactly the score I'd give it. It's solid. I'm gonna definitely want this on physical media, and I want everybody to go see this in theaters so that we get more work from this director funded.
Yeah, that was one of the things. Like, this is kind of another indie film, arts film, right? And then I saw this at AMC. I'm assuming you did too, but they even did the cast intro just saying, "Hey, thanks for supporting the movie," which you don't see a lot. So I really
didn't
appreciate that.
see that.
Oh, really? Okay. So at the viewing I saw, they showed Demi Moore and Margaret. They both sat down and were like, "Hey, thanks for coming out to this and supporting independent cinema or whatever, like independent movie making, basically, not theaters." And just kind of did like a quick thank you at the front of the show, which I really appreciated. Thought that was
Yeah,
pretty
those are
cool.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you're on the fence about this movie, don't be. Just go see it as soon as you can, because I don't know how long this is going to stay in theaters. I didn't even check the box office on this. Actually, I wonder how well it did.
I don't know. Let me see. Budget 17.5 million. Box office 3.6 is right now. That's not great.
No, that's not great. But
But a good movie's a good movie. So if the movie is critically received extremely well, she'll still make movies and stuff that we'll be able to see. So that's what's most important.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of those movies that becomes very successful, especially on home streaming, just because it didn't get quite the wide release you would expect, especially for a movie that costs that much. Which
Yeah.
17 million is not a lot for a movie, but that's still a pretty hefty budget, right? And I feel like for the talent that you had in that movie, there was probably a significant portion of that budget to the talent, to the stars, and then there's a lot of practical effects in there and some really great sets. So I could see that pretty easy why that cost that much. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're asking these actors to fucking give it their all too. So I'm pretty sure those actors should have been well paid for this movie too. They gave some Demi Moore, and specifically a Margaret Qualley, obviously is who I mean. They
those,
fucking
well, full nudity there's a certain vulnerability to that, right? Even in the age of OnlyFans and like everything else,
and
and like an empowerment, but on a big screen like that, and to do those scenes together, like I felt like I wasn't expecting that at all. I was like, oh, they'll kind of tease around some things, they won't show all this and that, and then I was like, oh, okay, you're really just gonna go all out with it.
yeah, no, it's a lot of it too, and like you're saying, it's vulnerable shots. It's a lot of because they're trying to show some of the aging of Demi Moore's body and stuff like that. I don't know. Yeah, it's just very interesting the way they did that. I thought it was tasteful, and whatnot. So
I was trying to think of what the old version of Elizabeth also reminded me of. When she first got that gross finger, it was just drag me to hell vibes. It reminded me of the woman at the beginning of that, and it was just straight to like the way, because they really focus on her hands and
no, that's spot on. When she's clicking on the desk in that movie, her nails,
yep,
because they keep zooming in on it, and it's driving the main character nuts.
that's immediately where my mind went when I saw that scene. I was like, okay, so this is really done. It's uncomfortable, because then you're looking at other things and decrepitcy, and like even like when she can't get her leg to move and she's fighting it in that chair, like they really show her body aging in a way that a lot of people's bodies really age. Like they weren't afraid to show you like what it could be. It all looked pretty natural, right? It looked like legit Demi Moore aging. Now, obviously, they made it more grotesque when
They
they
made it
depleted.
way more grotesque. Like when she was
Well,
breaking her legs, she had like lumps everywhere and was just part
yeah,
Quasimodo already.
yeah, with the back and the hunch. But I mean, like those early on signs, especially when she's just kind of getting the gray hair and going on there, they did these subtle things that the progression of that was really well done.
Or like the scenes of her cooking and eating in the kitchen, watching the TV
Yeah,
is gnarly.
and the contrast of like Sue being completely disgusted by that and Elizabeth doing that just to piss Sue off. Fucking great.
Yeah.
Like you're fighting with yourself. So
It's insane.
fascinating.
Yep.
Yeah,
Crazy movie.
go see this in theaters. If it's not playing at a theater near you, check it out as soon as it hits streaming, because you don't want to miss this one. It's fucking phenomenal.
Absolutely.
I would say it's in my top 3 movies of the year so far, hands down.
Yeah. There were a lot of good movies this year too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We're gonna see. I'm gonna rank them all at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that'll be fair. It'll be tough to choose, but I don't remember walking out of a movie just being like, man, there's so many things about this movie that I wanted to talk to you about. Sometimes we really kind of have to push through things to talk about, push through the details, get to them. And like this, it was like, I want to talk about the sound, the score, the character design, the cinematography, the lighting, even. Like it was just everything about this movie just like was going on all cylinders throughout this whole damn thing. So 9 out of 10.
Yeah. Well, that's that. That's the Substance review for tonight.
Yeah.
Go see it, motherfuckers.
And then we're coming right up on Terrifier 3, so I'm wondering how the gore in that's going to compare to the final act of The Substance. The Terrifier's not afraid to get gory, right? So,
dear God.
I mean, we're going to see an insane amount of this like pretty quick here. Which The Substance, I love it. It just was out of left field. I wasn't expecting it. Like everyone's waiting for Terrifier 3, but I feel like this is the sleeper horror movie of the year.
Yeah, it's up there. I really liked Late Night with the Devil, so I don't know what I would say I liked better. The execution in this shock is great. In concept, I think I like the other one better, but that's just because it's so hits so many things that I like about movies and culture and TV and things, and this is a little different. I think Late Night with the Devil is more rewatchable, but that's probably because this one, The Substance, is actually more horrifying.
Yes, and I would agree with that, right? Because when I think Late Night with the Devil, that was up until now, that was my favorite horror film of the year, but they're so different.
Yeah.
That I can't even compare them. It was just going to be like when I rank them overall and rate them, like where does that land compared to each other, not having anything to do with what the other film had as far as the horror concepts, because they're drastically different, but both fucking fascinating films.
You didn't see Abigail, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. I can't remember if we talked about that or not, but
I don't think we ever did a review of that. When I watched that, it was okay. It wasn't. I expected more from that based on the trailers, and I was disappointed when I saw it.
Oh, that's a bummer. I liked it quite a bit. I need to watch it again. Legs just came out on physical media too, and
okay,
I want to pick that up and give it another shot because my expectations were all fucked up for that one.
See, I haven't seen that one yet, so yeah, now that it's on home video, we probably should cover that because I just didn't get a chance to see it in theaters. Not that I didn't want to see it; it was definitely on my radar, but
yeah,
so much more to talk about to finish out this year strong for us. So, anyway, see The Substance in theaters, and we'll see you back next week with another episode, another video.
Yeah, another episode of the